Our story unfolds in an orc village called Bubas, nestled between towering mountains and dense forests. The village was a perfect refuge, hidden from the prying eyes of the malevolent. Our protagonist is a small orc called Gol, known throughout the village for his endless pranks and jokes. Today, he was running through the village, heading straight for Bork restaurant. Inside, a female orc was cutting meat with razor-sharp knives. With remarkable precision, she tossed the meat into the air, her expression neutral. In the blink of an eye, before the meat could even think of falling, she sliced it into countless pieces with incredibly swift movements. This orc cook was Jiram, the sole chef and owner of the Borg restaurant. Gull, spotting an opportune moment, jumped high into the air, trying to grab a piece of the meat. With his mouth wide open and his hand steady, he snatched a piece mid-flight, holding it with an iron grip. After this audacious robbery, he didn't miss a beat and continued his mad dash, knowing he needed to keep moving. Aunt Jiram, furious at this blatant act of theft, was not about to let Gull get away with it. She immediately started chasing him, throwing her knives at the little thief. But Gull, with his agile reflexes, managed to dodge his attacks. Although one of his knives cut a piece of the stolen meat, the village was buzzing with activity, with a group of orc builders hard at work building a new house using thick logs. Gull, feeling triumphant over his successful robbery, was not paying attention to where he was going. With that, he hit a spectacular log carried by one of the builders. The impact caused the stolen meat to fly out of his hands. The builder, a burly orc, barely felt the collision, but turned to see what had happened. Gull quickly regained his composure and resumed his frantic run as if nothing had happened, leaving the log he collided with behind. The builder shouted after him, warning the impertinent man to stay away from the construction site or face dire consequences. He even added that he should pray that he doesn't find it, because if that happens, instead of him eating meat, he would eat shit. But Gull didn't care and kept running. Nearby on their path was a field where a family of orcs worked, sweat dripping from their foreheads as they tilled the land. Grass flew in all directions with each swing of his tools. As Gull ran past, narrowly avoiding a blow that could have severed his head, he kept his eyes on the path ahead, oblivious to the fright. The orc farmers, tired from their work, just watched him go. One of the orcs wondered aloud why that boy was always running like something was chasing him. His companion shrugged, commenting that only the boy himself could answer that question, and at least it was of some use, as his running kept away the pesky birds that tormented the crops. Gull kept running, scaring every animal in his path, from squirrels to rabbits. Eventually, his swift legs carried him into the forest, where his companions were engaged in an important rite of initiation into war. They were in the middle of hunting a fat boar that was rooting around in the grass and soil nearby. They remembered that the village elders had taught wisdom, instructing the young orcs that the key to a successful hunt was patience and silence. So the young hunters hid in the nearby bushes, silently waiting for the perfect moment to attack. However, patience was a virtue they had not yet fully mastered. One of them gripped his spear tighter, eager to resolve the hunt quickly without further delay. Sensing movement, the boar became alert, but it was already too late for the beast. Realizing he had no escape, the orc hunter leaped from the bushes, abandoning all this patience business, and charged forward with his spear. He would have succeeded, too, if it hadn't been for Gull appearing in the clearing, screaming like crazy. The sudden distraction made the hunter falter for a moment, but it was enough for the boar to escape. Unaware of the chaos he had caused, Gull continued running. The frustrated hunters were furious, not understanding why he was running there. They vowed to catch Gull and roast him alive in place of the boar if they could not catch another that day. Suddenly, to their astonishment, the boar stopped and stood near them, as if taunting them. The two orc companions, who were called Dobuk and Kagan, began to smile with satisfaction. Kagan imagined the feast they would have that night, and Dobuk couldn't wait to get his fill of wild boar meat. However, the boar had other plans and escaped once again with a loud and uncomfortable fart. The two angry friends ran after the boar, cursing it and vowing to kill the stupid pig. Meanwhile, Gull finally slowed down. He stopped because he came across what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, a towering mountain. He then boldly declared that today was the day when the great Gull, the conqueror of mountains, would challenge this peak. Without hesitation, he charged forward, jumping and grabbing the nearest ledge. Gull climbed with the same vigor and determination that fueled his running, his hands moving quickly from one handhold to the next. Suddenly, a strong impact shook the mountain, almost making him lose control. Looking down, he saw a lone figure striking the mountain with powerful blows. It was one of his village orc warriors, and to Gull's surprise, this Hulk-like orc, complete with the iconic ripped pants, was shaking the mountain with each powerful blow. Poor Gull struggled to maintain his position, but his initial surprise quickly turned to excitement. "That's it!" he shouted with joy. Embracing the challenge, Gull climbed with even more enthusiasm. his determination unwavering. Nothing could stop him now. Finally, he reached the top, his sweaty, tired face shining with joy. Standing atop the mountain, he let out a triumphant shout, declaring to the world that he was now at his feet. From the beginning, you must have wondered why Gull kept running. Well, let me tell you, that's a silly question, because obviously, it's because he's Gull. His heart filled with excitement as he thought of the unexplored land that stretched beyond the horizon. Standing on the peak, he shouted to the world below, claiming his place as the fearless adventurer and conqueror of mountains. "I am Gull. Behold the glorious sight only the great can witness," he declared fervently. He vowed to travel to lands beyond the horizon and be known as the mightiest conqueror of mountains. Out of nowhere, a strong gust of wind pushed him, almost causing him to fall. But Gull managed to grab the edge and save his skin. Meanwhile, back in Bubi's village, all the orcs began to gather in the biggest tent for the orc meeting. The fearsome orc chief, known as Gurk, was about to lead the hunting ceremony, one of his most sacred traditions that all young orcs must undergo. For these young people, surviving in nature is a fundamental skill they must master to face the dangers of their world. Therefore, veteran orcs, whether farmers or warriors, spent time training, observing, and evaluating the new generation for hunting. Tonight marks the culmination of all that effort. It's the gathering to celebrate the achievements of 4 young orc warriors, or at least there should be 4. Chief Garrick was visibly displeased that a certain young, bald Gull had missed the ceremony. As usual, little Gull was still running through the forest long after the sun had set, more desperate and out of breath than ever. Back in the village, he spotted an innocent rabbit nibbling on some grass. This sight reminded him that tonight should be the most important night for the new orc warriors. Despite his fatigue, Gull prepared to increase his speed. If there was one thing he was good at, it was running. He quickly positioned his arm to perform a technique while maintaining his fast pace. All of his remaining energy was focused on perfecting the timing of his next move. It was an impeccable grab and run by the rabbit, tricked by its ear. As Gull ran back to the hunting celebration, he thought that bringing something small was better than arriving empty-handed. Even so, he knew he was still in big trouble with Boss Garrick. The boss grew more impatient by the minute. Sitting on his throne, this night should be sacred for the entire village. Behind the door of the boss's house, the voices grew louder and more playful. It looked like Gull was doing his best impression of an NFL player, running at full speed. He slipped into the meeting with his bald head shining, holding the rabbit's ear like it was a football. Gull had finally arrived. He felt like he had just scored the touchdown of his life as he crossed the threshold, feeling like the best athlete in the world. A magnificent move by Gull, the conqueror. However, he was so caught up in the moment that he forgot what awaited him inside the tent. The fearsome orcs inside were unimpressed by his dramatic entrance. On the contrary, they stared at him threateningly. Gull tried to hide his nervousness as he held his little rabbit, trying to blend in with the crowd. Boss Gurk's gaze was nothing short of piercing. Gurk was a gigantic beast who embodied the strength of the orcs. With all the hunters and trainees, called unto, gathered around him, it was time to gather the young hunters and witness the fruits of their labor. Each of them had been given a full day to hunt alone, a task designed to test their skills and provide something to satiate the village's appetite. First was the sassy and daring junior hunter, Kagan. He proudly displayed his prize, a remarkably healthy and vigorous catch, although his constant flatulence amused and, in a sense, embarrassed the villagers. They burst into applause, filled with pride, while Chief Garrick nodded with sufficient satisfaction. Next came another young hunter, carrying the head of a slaughtered deer. His fists were raw, a testament to the struggle he had faced with his prey. It was evident that he had fought fiercely, proving that his head was tougher than the deer's antlers. The crowd praised him, seeing in him a shining example of orc strength. Even Chief Garrick smiled and offered his greetings. The third hunter, Junior Motu, held his head high, presenting a brown sheep that he had hunted effortlessly. His catch was flawless, and he had achieved it without breaking a sweat or causing any disarray. The chief couldn't help but applaud, delighted to see such a promising young hunter. The villagers even nicknamed him Mudo Bopai, recognizing his superior abilities compared to his peers. Finally, it was Gull's turn. The mighty junior hunter approached with a small, sad rabbit in his hand. What he lacked in size, he made up for in sheer determination. But the villagers were not impressed. There was no applause, no celebrations, just an impassive, sepulchral silence. After witnessing the promising youths, Chief Garrick's mood darkened when he saw the measly offering that Gull had brought after a full day of hunting. Gull, son of Gulfin, the greatest blacksmith in Bubi's village, stood trembling as the chief walked towards him, his fury palpable. Gull stammered, accidentally calling the boss Chip, further insulting him with the pathetic rabbit he presented for the sacred ceremony. Chief Garrick, feeling deeply insulted, prepared his fist with fiery passion and threw it with diabolical speed, like a missile aimed straight at Gull. The impact of the boss's fist, as big as Gull's entire body, was so powerful that it turned the world black and white for a moment. The entrance to the tent was completely destroyed, and Gull flew away like a rag doll. Chief Gag's strength was so immense that 2 orc warriors had to jump in and catch Gull with all their might to prevent him from being thrown into the unknown. In that instant, it seemed as if Gull's soul had left his body. The pain from the blow numbed his senses, leaving him unconscious. When he awoke moments later, the hunting ceremony had ended, and he found himself alone in the middle of the village. Some kind-hearted orcs had tended to his wounds, but the pain of the chief's disciplinary punch still lingered. Chief Gag had only one expectation for his juniors: to hunt. However, it seemed like Gull spent every day playing instead of perfecting his skills. The orcs were known for their strength, rigorous training, and discipline, but Gull's antics made a mockery of their proud traditions. His weakness and laziness while hunting had earned Gag's contempt. The chief no longer wanted to see Gull's bald head. The boy needed to reflect on his actions and understand the gravity of his behavior. Gull knew his boss wanted him to reflect on his mistakes, but that punch had been too hard. As he walked through the dimly lit village, he realized he had reached the entrance of his house. Rather than face the greatest blacksmith and his grumpy old mother, Gull chose to keep walking. Just thinking about her face, angry and well-equipped, sent a shiver down his spine. Then he continued his walk, singing carefree, until he reached his secret base. Their base was a cave near a cliff on top of a mountain. It was a cozy hideout where he had everything he needed: food, a bed, and all the essentials a young orc could need for a night alone. In the corner, he even had a lamp that needed just a little shake to light up the place. The day had been exhausting for Gull, and he longed to lie down for a moment. Although he initially felt comfortable, his wound from the boss's punch began to throb again. All he wanted was to rest, but the consequences of his actions haunted him painfully. It seemed like the night was far from over for the young orc. His entire body tingled with discomfort, and even his bladder refused to let him rest. Seeking relief, he headed to the edge of the cliff outside his cave, his secret retreat. Despite the pain, Gull wouldn't miss the chance to play. He had become so skilled at using the cliff as a retreat that he could now perform the legendary Pierre Rolling Thunder. However, his fun was abruptly interrupted when he saw a huge fire in the middle of the forest. Looking closer, he realized this was no ordinary forest fire. It was moving through the trees with alarming speed. Adding to his misadventures, Gull heard a disconcerting sound beneath his feet while standing on the edge of the cliff. The cliff, his makeshift outdoor bathroom, began to collapse just as he was urinating. The edge collapsed due to the same freak incident that caused the forest fire. As he fell from the terrifying height, he managed to pull up his pants, but his urine fell out along with him. Gull hit the rocky ground with a painful thud, adding a second excruciating injury to his night. His back was in agony, and he screamed in pain as consciousness began to slip away again. To make matters worse, his urine, falling from the cliff, landed directly into his open, screaming mouth. The horrible taste brought him back to full consciousness, stopping him from passing out. Gull desperately tried to expel the urine from his mouth, feeling as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. The bizarre, painful, and humiliating experience left him stunned, questioning the series of unfortunate events that had befallen him that cursed night. The pain in Gull's stomach and back, combined with the salty taste in his mouth, was pure torture. But something more urgent pulled him out of his misery. A colossal beast in the form of a wolf was chasing a dark elf, and they were heading directly towards Gull. The dark elf was clearly injured, but his eyes burned with determination, driven to make sense of the chaos around him. Let's go back in time a little. The orcish forest is treacherous terrain, a labyrinth of dense foliage and uneven ground. The dark elf was in the middle of a harrowing chase, his breathing labored and his hands shaking from holding a knife. He couldn't afford to slow down, but he needed to find a way to hinder his pursuers, if only for a second. With skillful precision, he threw the knife at a perfect angle and speed. The sharp blade cut through the air like a bullet. However, the fire wolf beast was unimpressed. The creature, a monstrous entity with flames flickering in its eyes, deflected the knife with ease, splitting it in two. The dark elf's attempt to delay the beast failed miserably, leaving him frustrated and cursing under his breath. The dark elf had been running for days, his injury making each step more agonizing. It was becoming increasingly difficult to escape the beast, a massive creature that looked like a living fireball. Upon closer look, the beast had metallic structures on its back, emitting steam and smoke. Its claws were razor-sharp and capable of crushing the solid stones of the orcish forest. This ruthless beast was focused on its target with a single purpose: to capture the dark elf with all its strength. She struck the ground with her claws, almost tearing the ground the elf walked on. He managed to dodge at the last second, but the force of the impact caused him to stumble, grinding his teeth in pain. The dark elf barely managed to regain his balance after a few moments, Although the attack worsened his condition considerably, blood gushed from his mouth as a sharp pain spread across his abdomen. Yet despite it all, he clung to his mission with grim determination. He had something precious to protect, even if it meant sacrificing his life. Emerging from the smoke behind the beast were ominous silhouettes. Two sinister bandits, grinning from ear to ear, approached with malevolent glee. The smallest of them, with tall hair and piercing eyes, exuded a particularly disturbing aura. The dark elf felt an overwhelming and oppressive presence, filling him with dread. Despite the pain and fear that overwhelmed him, the dark elf refused to be weak. Like a trained assassin, he found another rusty knife and threw it with all the strength he had left. His determination was unwavering. He would fight until his last breath, no matter how exhausted and seriously injured he was. But their efforts seemed futile. The beast simply snatched the knife out of the air with a nonchalant swing. And so, we arrive at the moment when Gull's legendary Pierre Rolling Thunder was abruptly interrupted. The small knife, thrown by the desperate dark elf, shot towards the precipice, retaining enough force to cut through the edge of Gull's secret retreat. The dark elf decided to muster the last vestiges of his strength to run again. He launched himself into the forest like a madman, approaching the point where the edge of the cliff had been cut off. The dark elf was so focused on gaining some distance that he didn't notice the small bald orc, Gull, vomiting urine onto the nearby rocks. Gull, with the acrid taste still lingering on his tongue, was completely perplexed by the bizarre scene unfolding before him. All he could see was an injured dark elf being chased by a demonic-looking beast. Finally, Gull realized that this absurd tableau was actually happening right in front of him. Panicking, he tried to escape as quickly and desperately as possible. Encountering a monster after falling off a cliff and drinking his own urine was definitely not in Gull's plans for the night. The dark elf finally noticed the young orc causing a commotion and deduced that there must be an orc village nearby. If that were the case, he might still have a chance to escape this dire situation alive. The dark elf tried to call out to Gull, but the bald orc was too focused on avoiding the beast to respond. In his panic, Gull even considered using the fallen rocks as makeshift weapons. He kicked a piece of rock toward the beast, which he had nicknamed Hot Dog. The beast just smiled arrogantly as the small stone flew through the air. However, instead of a simple and ineffective kick, the stone managed to create a crack just in time for the impact. This unexpected result surprised the beast, as it had not anticipated that a small bald orc could injure its sharp claw. Even so, Gull was still just a scared child, and his actions only served to further enrage the already fearsome beast. Seeing the situation rapidly deteriorating, Gull did the only thing he could think of. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him. His speed was so impressive that even the dark elf assassin was surprised. Unfortunately, Gull's clumsiness and distraction soon got the better of him. He tripped over a piece of rock, and his devilish speed caused him to roll down the rocky path like a barrel. Unable to stop his momentum, Gull found himself involuntarily diving off a cliff for the second time that night. He landed with a thud, rolling wildly like a rag doll. His wounds and bruises began to accumulate, both physically and mentally. Eventually, Gull stopped, lying on the ground, limp and motionless. The dark elf followed, concerned for the young orc's well-being. The killer could not be sure whether Gull was alive or not. A few seconds later, Gull's survival instincts kicked in, and he abruptly regained consciousness. He immediately sensed someone nearby and instinctively threw a quick punch upwards, catching the stranger by surprise. Gull even slapped the dark elf before realizing what was happening. Apologizing profusely, he acknowledged that he had overreacted to the presence of the unknown figure, whom he now called Holder. Noticing the pointed ears and unique build, Gull realized he was seeing an elf for the first time in his life. The killer, although tired and exhausted, his legs beginning to give out, still had eyes filled with relentless determination. He was seriously injured and in urgent need of help. Before he could formally ask Gull for help, the hot dog had already reached the top of the cliff. The metallic structures on the beast's body began to hum like a steam locomotive. The noise of the temperature rise steadily grew, reaching a terrifying crescendo. In its enormous mouth, the beast formed a ball of blazing flames, the mass of which was thrown with such ferocity that it looked like a meteorite falling from the heavens. Gull and the dark elf, both stunned, realized they had no choice but to stray or be incinerated. They had no other option but to jump out of the way with all their might. Otherwise, they would be cooked alive. The dark elf managed to dodge the attack with relative grace, but Gull, a master of painful landings, fell to the rocky ground. The dark elf's injuries began to worsen, blood flowing at an alarming rate. The only hope he had left was the clumsy young orc before him. The dark elf desperately needed Gull's help, but Gull, thinking only of his own survival, was initially unwilling to listen. Despite his efforts, the dark elf, now on the verge of collapse, finally fainted as the menacing beast approached. Weakly regaining consciousness, the dark elf witnessed something remarkable. The young orc who looked like a coward was now carrying him. Gull, although terrified and crying, was risking his life to save a stranger. He wasn't thinking, just acting with one thought: escape. However, with the beast speeding up, his situation became more and more serious. As the deadly attack approached, Gull made a split-second decision. He threw the dark elf out of the impact zone with all his strength. The young orc's speed and reflexes saved him as he dodged the lethal blow from above. After a nimble maneuver, Gull resumed his frantic run, launching the dark elf high and far into the night. Gull's agility allowed him to narrowly escape the devastating attack, his bald head shining in the moonlight. That infernal beast energy had missed them by a few centimeters. However, the chase was far from over. Hot Dog was readying another flaming spear in his fearsome jaw. For now, the most sensible plan was to head to Bubi's village as quickly as possible. There, they could seek help from the adult orcs. But first, they needed to survive yet another massive onslaught of fire. The pair managed to escape yet another deadly attack, albeit at the cost of Gull's pants, which were now on fire. Gull, well familiar with the terrain, navigated the tangled vegetation with agility. While humming a local orc song, he did not hesitate to run through the area with his rear exposed, a testament to his familiarity and speed in these surroundings. Somehow, he led them straight out of the orc village, and his quick wit gave him the opportunity to mock the beast chasing them with a satisfying snack. Meanwhile, in the town of Bubis, Chef Gak was enjoying a peaceful evening at the local ramen restaurant. He let out a deep sigh after another day full of stressful accomplishments. The only solace for his stress was his beloved ramen. This steaming bowl of divine food was her only comfort, the only thing that understood her pain. Chef Gak loved his ramen, its tantalizing aroma filling his senses. The thought of indulging in this perfect meal made him as happy as a schoolgirl. His battle-hardened hands, huge and calloused, looked almost comical as they delicately held the small chopsticks. This was his sacred ritual, the first batch of noodles, the first perfect bite. He blew gently on the noodles, knowing it might burn his tongue. Gurk savored this moment, preparing to indulge in his impressive ramen. But just as he was about to take that heavenly bite, Gurk was abruptly interrupted by a flying gull and a dark elf crashing into the ramen restaurant. The impact sent the stand flying into pieces, scattering noodles, kitchen utensils, and walls everywhere. Gull and the elf instantly fainted amid the wreckage. The cheerful and lively boss disappeared in an instant, replaced by a dark fury. His eyes turned black with rage, veins bulging with pure rage. Gull's cry for help went unheard. All Gak cared about was his ruined bowl of delicious ramen. This fury needed an outlet, and Gak's speed was impressive as he twisted his body, eyes filling with angry tears. His fist tightened, and the trajectory was perfectly defined. This was the pride of the orcs, the feared and respected chief. He threw a punch so powerful it seemed to change the very fabric of reality, a move he called Ramen's Revenge. The beast, thrown into disarray, bounced off the walls and floor, reduced to a pathetic state. Infrastructure along the way was devastatingly destroyed. The once fearsome beast no longer resembled a wolf or dog after Gak's attack. She was thrown to where two mysterious figures stood, watching. The figures, indifferent to the destruction of their beast, smiled coldly. To them, he was just a useless creature, having failed in his mission. With his pet discarded, the real event was about to begin. The blue-skinned duo targeted not only the dark elf but also the orcs. Chief Gak, having regained his composure after sending the beast into oblivion, turned and quickly ordered the surrounding orcs to sound their horns, signaling the presence of intruders. The response was immediate. The echo of the bugle reverberated throughout the city, reaching every corner. Orcs of all professions, young and old, began to coordinate the evacuation to the refuge of the city. For many, the threat of intruders was a call to action, an unmistakable signal to arm themselves and prepare for battle. That was the signal to gather and join Chief Gak for the imminent fight. The seasoned veterans of Bubis prepared for combat, each ready to risk his life. With Chief Gak leading the charge, the orcs stood united against the two demonic figures who seemed to bring nothing but bad news. To the uninvited intruders, Chief Gak made it clear he was ready for war. He swore to teach these two foolish intruders the gravity of their error. The war-hardened orcs of Bubis were ready to follow their leader into battle. With a resolute step forward, Chief Gak led the charge. Meanwhile, Gull was panicking as the dark elf finally succumbed to fatigue and injuries, losing consciousness. Not far from the turmoil, the other junior hunters watched the events unfold from their hiding spots. Two of them were hesitant to get involved, but Motu was eager to get closer. He wanted the young hunters to operate as a team. Although the adult orcs were preparing for war, the junior hunters would only join if Motu led the way. The three young orcs ran alongside Gull, who was panicking. Gull finally noticed his companions and realized that they had left the village to face the front lines. Without hesitation, Gull shared an epic handshake with his friend Motu. The other junior hunters were stunned by the sight of the small figure covered in blood on the ground. One of the orc warriors spotted the young orcs and yelled at them for being close to the battlefield. They quickly explained that they were simply looking for Gull. Across the field, the mysterious duo finally made their move. They smiled confidently, showing that they were not afraid of the approaching battalion of orcs. But his confidence was not unfounded. Gull shivered when he saw their smiling faces. Motu, feeling the immense pressure, asked the orc warriors who these formidable enemies were, based solely on the heavy aura they exuded. The warrior knew exactly what they were dealing with. For a brief moment, Gull's eyes widened, and he muttered something terrifying. These two were no ordinary bandits. Their piercing eyes could see through everything, a trait possessed only by certain beings. They were demons in every sense and had come down to capture the Dark Elf. But Chief Gak was undeterred. He issued a stern warning to the demons, ordering them to retreat or face certain death. The smaller demon, however, seemed to disregard the warning with a smile. He introduced himself as Izolrite, the vice captain of the demon army. Izol even suggested that they would leave peacefully once they recovered the Dark Elf. Chief Gak of the village of Orcus Pubis responded with a firm statement. He wasn't about to let these demons dictate the rules in his territory, especially after they had interrupted his precious ramen moment. There would be no negotiation. The demons of greed could either leave or be buried where they were. This provoked a loud laugh from the vice captain, Izolrite. Of course, the boss will regret his words, Izol sneered, giving the signal for the greater demon to make his move. The enormous demon's speed was no mere boast. He disappeared with the wind in the blink of an eye. Chief Gak felt a brief moment of dread, but it wasn't for himself, it was for his warriors. Quickly turning around, he yelled at everyone to hold their positions. The greater demon's movements were as brutal as they were fast. The formidable orc warriors were systematically felled, one by one, in a violent attack. A warrior managed to sense the impending danger from behind, blocking the muscular demon's huge fist with his sword. However, even a decent reaction time was useless against pure brute force. The orc flew back, holding his partially destroyed sword, pain coursing through his body. Fortunately, small hands helped break his fall. The four junior hunters had caught their orc uncle, their teeth clenched in determination. Even for a battle veteran orc, these demons were overwhelmingly powerful. The difference in size was striking, with orcs known for their size, but this horrible muscular demon surpassed them in height. This demon, infamous for ranking third in the army of the demons of greed, was wreaking havoc. The other side of the battlefield seemed more crowded, and the young hunters began to worry. One of the warriors mentally applauded the demon's fearsome display, determined to make his own impressive appearance. He proudly introduced himself as Bobai the Builder. Pointing to a house he had just built, he boasted of its sturdiness, highlighting his construction skills. The demon appreciated the introduction. "I didn't know I was facing someone who builds perfect complements to crush," he scoffed. The third-ranked demon tensed his legs for a lunge destined to end all lunges. Bobai the Builder stood tall and proud, ready to protect the new generation behind him before the fight could spiral further out of control. He shouted at the young orcs to run away as fast as they could. Now that they had seen what their enemies were capable of, true fear lit a fire under their feet. Bobai and his cracked shield prepared for a battle of strength, while the demon smiled maniacally, seemingly enjoying the fight. Chief Gak's warning inadvertently left him vulnerable to the other enemy. Izolrite, the vice captain of the demon army, had already leapt into the air, preparing an extremely lethal kick towards Gak's neck. The blow produced a sonic boom and an impact capable of obliterating anything in its path. Fortunately, Boss Gak's reactions were quick as lightning, and his defense was exceptionally robust. He received the blow without flinching and then counterattacked, forcing Izolrite, the demon, to retreat. Izol found this amusing. He was fighting the embodiment of orc strength and couldn't help but laugh, genuinely impressed that the orc chieftain was more capable than he had initially expected. Having witnessed the demon's speed firsthand, Chief Gak realized that the only solution was to end the fight quickly. When Izol took off his coat, he didn't expect the boss to be easily defeated, knowing that this was just the beginning. Or perhaps, if the intensity remained high from the beginning, it could also be the end. Izol, a speed fanatic, moved across the field as if the laws of physics did not apply. Chief Gak, prepared for an expected impact, discovered that it did not come as predicted. However, relying on his keen fighting instincts, he sensed her vulnerability from behind. Quickly turning around with a fierce glare, he unleashed a savage spinning kick, hitting Izol squarely in the face and sending the demon spinning like a relentless cyclone. But Izol was formidable. He recovered and regained his balance on the ground in seconds. Feeling not pain but excitement, eager to continue the fight, the demon's smile disappeared. and Gek could only make out a blur before Izol closed the distance and delivered a solid knee to the boss's face. Gek was thrown, his face bleeding profusely. He lost control of his body, rolling across the open field. The demon was relentless. He wasn't done with his brutal combos. Each critical blow landed clean, and Gek began to think the fight was becoming monotonous. Gek's massive body was pummeled and launched into the sky, his landing creating a small crater filled with his blood. The demon, showing no mercy, stomped on Gek's head, criticizing him for not handing over the elf sooner. Izol intended for Gek to witness the destruction of his beloved city. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battlefield, Bob the Builder faced Amphin. Bob, having heard that the demon's target was the mysterious elf, realized that the elf was with the village children. He needed to buy time so they could escape. However, upon seeing the giant Amphin, Bob feared that this could be his end. Despite the overwhelming odds, he believed that the orcs would never retreat. Facing the demon's overwhelming strength, Bob remained determined not to give up. But Bob's sword was no match for Amphin's strength. The collision broke his weapon, and for a brief moment, Bob understood the gravity of the situation. He had nothing to defend against the demon's barbaric strength, making him an easy target for the impending demon hammer. Amphin effortlessly pushed the orc warrior away, throwing him to the brink of despair. With a sinister smile, Amphin threw Bob the Builder against the very house he had built with pride. Bob's injuries were serious, to say the least. His torso and stomach bore deep, crater-like wounds. But the demon wasn't finished yet. With his devilish speed, the muscular monster charged for more. Amphin wanted to ensure that Bob was firmly secured to the house, which could also serve as his final resting place, a makeshift coffin. A savage punch destroyed Bob's insides, and the excessive impact lifted the city's sturdiest house off its foundation. Bob the Builder was firm but completely defeated. Amphin, almost mockingly, praised Bob for his bravery, a valiant orc trying to buy more time for his mission. Nearby, the young hunters ran desperately, their hearts pounding in fear as they carried the injured dark elf. Despite gaining some distance, Amphin's demonic speed was still overwhelming. Another punch from the muscular demon landed with the force of a ton of TNT. When the smoke cleared, a new figure emerged from the chaos. This person, with illustrious black hair and fierce eyes, successfully blocked the demon's powerful fist with a single hand. To the young hunters, she was Anti-Lawson. To her master, she was a disciple. And to everyone in town, she was Chief Gek's right hand. Let's go back a bit to witness their efforts in evacuating people. Lawson directed the evacuation, ensuring the safety of everyone in the emergency shelters. Meanwhile, amidst the chaos, a messenger arrived to notify the old man of the intruders at his door. The old pipe smoker, with a fearsome look in his eyes, seemed unsurprised by the news, as if he already knew what was happening. Lawson was busy ensuring everyone's safety when the explosions of battle resounded. She immediately ran towards the front lines as fast as she could. The evacuation zone was located on top of a cliff overlooking the city. While the battle raged below, she saw the young hunters running away desperately, their lives hanging in the balance. Going down the long way would mean arriving too late, so she made the bold decision to jump from such heights. Activating his raging spirit beast, the soul of a massive and imposing rhinoceros emanated from his body. One of the older orcs explained the phenomenon to those unfamiliar with it. The sight was inspiring. The ink-sky spiritual beast, the rhinoceros, was a blessing only granted to some orc warriors. Awakening one's inner beast required endless effort and training. In Lawson's case, this awakening granted him unusual strength and skin as tough as armor. This powerful orc warrior wasn't Chief Gek's right hand for nothing. With an agile and formidable leap, she launched herself like a missile, controlling the dizzying speed of her body to target the young hunters. Amphin was about to claim the lives of a quartet of young orcs, but Aunt Lawson was already on her way to the rescue. With the soul and strength of a beast, she was the supreme orc fighter, intercepting the demon's attack with a single hand. Amphin quickly realized that this newcomer was not to be underestimated and unleashed a series of follow-up attacks. However, Lawson thwarted each move with ease, demonstrating his skill and power. The boys watched in amazement, feeling as if their savior had descended from the heavens. Muddu was filled with pride for his master, while Gull hastily insisted that his uncle would have looked even more impressive in the midst of battle. The young orcs argued, almost forgetting their duty to take the bleeding dark elf to safety. The boys' incessant arguing left Lawson dizzy with frustration. Almost as fearsome as a demon, she screamed at the boys to shut up. Despite the chaos, Lawson knew the smartest course of action was to take the dark elf to the village healer. However, the biggest threat remained right in front of her. Anyone who threatened the village would be eliminated, and it was time for the adults to take action. The orcs of Boobies, regardless of profession or age, were ready for battle. Even the old butcher, alongside the farmers and the orc that resembled the Incredible Hulk, was preparing to fight. Amphin, faced with the imminent attack, remained impassive. At the forefront was Lozan, who began using his spiritual beast, increasing his strength and agility. With a single stomp, she lifted a huge chunk of earth, similar to a rhinoceros horn. The ground rushed towards Amphion, but the demon remained motionless. Amphion simply leapt onto the high ground with natural grace and strength. On the other side, Lozan was engaged in combat, using her other foot to execute another spirit-enhanced move. She used the high ground as a ramp, launching herself towards the airborne demon. For a moment, Amphion was caught off guard. Lozan's spiritual rhinoceros energy combined with his fist, colliding with the demon's punch. The clash of pure strength resulted in a stalemate. But Amphion found himself in a precarious situation as he quickly fell. However, this battle was not just fought by Lozan. Unfortunately, some of the adult orcs, less skilled in combat, were easily defeated by the third-ranked army of greed demons. Even with minimal control over her falling body, Amphion could still feel the other orcs preparing an attack that would cause significant damage to the ground. He landed and struggled to find his balance for a few moments. A pair of burly orcs, moving with alarming speed, surrounded her like sharp, rotating blades. They were the Butcher and the Orc Elder. Both bore some serious injuries, yet their relentless assault continued. Amphion's smile vanished, replaced by a silent fury. The two women treated the demon's body as if it were meat to be chopped and sliced at will. Amphion's solution was brutal. He tore their blades away entirely. The coordinated attacks stopped abruptly, shocking the two orcs. After discarding the cumbersome blades, Amphion took a deep breath. He then quickly spun, creating a vacuum that repelled everything around him. While it ended with the orcs, it seemed like the Bruce Banner-like orc wanted a piece of the action. The Orc Hulk took advantage of the opportunity of Amphion's exposed back and unleashed a series of powerful combos. However, its strength was insufficient to cause serious damage to a high-ranking demon. Amphion retaliated, but the Orc's nimble footwork allowed him to dodge the attack. Unfortunately for the Orc Hulk, this was followed by a savage grab to the face and a crushing blow against the ground. Amphion's posture changed as she heard the Orc's head hit the earth. Lozan, having recovered from the previous collision, rushed in for another attempt on the brutal demon. She knew that if she could withstand the blow infused with the spiritual beast, she could save the Orc Hulk. Simultaneously, the situation on the boss's side looked grim. Izol had taken down Chief Gek and now aimed to finish off the enemies and capture the elf. Izol seemed indifferent to what his partner was saying, consumed by an intense fury. He was so enraged that he mercilessly beat Gek's face. Lozan arrived moments later, his spiritual beast ready for another charge, aiming to deliver a decisive blow. It was a blow worthy of a great orc warrior. The impact turned the world upside down, but the demon quickly regained its balance. The only thing he lost from the terrible blow was his hat. The battlefield seemed to pause as Izol remained motionless, his bald head with 3 miserable hairs exposed. The muscular demon's dismembered smile returned as he felt the orc woman's strength. Lozan, although exhausted, marveled at the demon's resilience. She had spent all her energy in a short space of time, and most of the villagers were now incapacitated. Chief Gek's right hand could only hope that they had bought enough time for the children to escape. For the sake of all wounded and fallen warriors, the young orcs needed to be saved. However, the foolish youths didn't run, they just hid in a bush, watching the battle unfold. Maidu even celebrated how strong his master Lozan was. They ignored the orders and forgot to take the dark elf to the city doctor, Mr. Buddha. Hearing the nearby rustling, Lozan's veins almost exploded with anger at the stupidity of these boys. They already knew they were in trouble after being brought to their attention and started pointing fingers at each other. Now, not only did they fear the demons, but they were also terrified of Lozan's wrath. Chief Gek's right hand, Lozan, had every reason to be furious with these insolent boys for their lack of consideration. However, she had little time for a stern reprimand when an explosion reverberated across the field. The impact of the explosion even dislodged the boys and the unconscious dark elf from their hiding place. Lozan wondered if the boss had finished his ramen or not. Gull's ramen had been ruined along with the entire stand. Lozan already felt a headache coming on because the situation was far from pleasant. Boss Gek, who had been beaten and left on the ground, was now revitalized. Although his face was bloodied and bruised, his power level visibly increased. Izol couldn't believe his eyes. Such a transformation could only come from experts known as Beast Masters. The demon's biggest mistake was allowing Chief Gek the opportunity to rise. The boss's fury, combined with his beast spirit, exploded in the form of a gigantic bear, befitting a warrior of his stature. Izol composed himself and laughed arrogantly. A Beast Master was the strongest orc alive, and the demon never thought he would find one there. Gek tried to contain his anger to avoid destroying the city, but now his only desire was to make Izol regret ever setting foot in Bubies and wasting her precious time on ramen. Izol was the first to attack. eager to test the abilities of such a powerful enemy. His speed was worthy of admiration, producing a powerful sonic blast with a simple kick. But that wouldn't be enough to overcome an angry orc boss. Gehrk tried to counterattack with a grab, but the demon remained evasive. Another surprise attack from behind was blocked in time. The boss tried to retaliate, but was still struggling against Izol's speed. The demon tried a low attack, but Gehrk managed to block it again. This time, it looked like the orc might capitalize on an opening. The two fierce competitors gave it their all, teeth gritted in determination. Gehrk finally revealed his fierce and fearsome bear hammer. No matter how fast the demon was, this attack was of a different caliber. With a single blow, he knocked down the seemingly untouchable vice-captain of the Greed Demon Army. The blow from Chief Gehrk's hammer made Izol's body bounce on the hard ground like a basketball. Pain slowly took over his brain, making him scream unintelligibly. Demons can be brutal, but orcs can be just as ruthless. The boss grabbed Izol with his massive hands, trapping him in a crushing chokehold followed by a lightning-fast knee, perfectly placed to inflict maximum damage. Izol lost all control of her body, becoming Gehrk's personal punching bag. While in the air, it was unclear whether the demon could even form thoughts. He instinctively woke up when he felt the gigantic orc preparing for a fighting move in the air. This was Chief Gehrk's special Torbellino bomb, a physical feat so powerful it seemed like a natural disaster. The rapid and uninterrupted rotations further disoriented the demon's already confused mind. Despite this, Izol found a way to free herself from Gehrk's grip, escaping a certain fatal blow. As Izol retreated, his arms began to glow with a luminous aura that solidified into dark, gear-like armor. This transformation, known as soul molding, was a rare ability among high-ranking demons, allowing them to recover and enhance their combat skills. Despite the severe beating, Izol's body began to recover. A satisfied smile returned to his face as the mysterious gear accelerated. Izol launched a powerful, dark attack, his eyes bloodshot from the previous beating. He managed to turn the fight into hand-to-hand combat, delivering a clean kick to Chief Gehrk's chin. The blow restored his almost manic confidence, leading to a flurry of kicks from multiple angles. Fast and unpredictable, the attack would have overwhelmed most opponents. However, Chief Gehrk remained calm and composed, waiting for the right moment to exploit Izol's overconfidence. When the opportunity presented itself, he grabbed the demon's outstretched leg so hard he almost broke it. Sensing the presence of his spiritual beast in that grip, Gehrk executed a devastating move. He smashed Izol into the ground, making him eat dirt in the most violent way possible. Chief Gehrk did not back down. He braced himself for another brutal attack, demonstrating that orcs can be exceptionally cruel when necessary. Izol was learning this lesson the hard way, her body being treated like a hammer hitting the earth. The relentless blows continued until the ground, which should have been brown, turned crimson red with the demon's blood. Chief Gehrk felt compelled to reintroduce himself. As leader of Bubies, he showed that he was not yet a complete beast master, but his skill was undeniable. Across the battlefield, the war against the intruders continued. The silhouette of an older orc, hunched over, could be seen inside one of the houses. The orc straightened up, performing some chiropractic adjustments on himself with audible pops. Finally, he stood up, corrected his posture and left, ignoring the door in his path. Meanwhile, Lozen had been knocked unconscious under the brutal demon's relentless blows. Junior Hunter Matu watched in awe and fear, realizing the gravity of the situation. The young fools might be adept at hunting forest animals, but dealing with a demon was an entirely different matter. The three kids advanced recklessly, without a clear plan. One of them even picked up a small rock to use as a weapon. He felt insulted that such naive children would dare attack him without considering their own safety. The demon's hand seemed enormous compared to the young orc he was about to grab. Amphine grinned hideously as he sent one of the orcs flying with a simple motion, as if swatting an annoying fly. As for the other two, he relished the idea of punishing their foolish bravery. A mere push to their foreheads knocked them out, while Gull remained paralyzed with fear. The last one standing was small, bald Gull. He froze, watching the humiliating scene unfold. He prepared to deliver the final blow, the air around his hand imploding with energy. However, when the dust settled, Amphine was perplexed. Gull managed to dodge the blow perfectly, albeit nervously. Gull trembled in his boots, but remained alert to the demon's movements. He tried to crush him like a bug, but Gull managed to dodge the deadly blow at the last moment. However, his frantic leaps and zigzag movements soon put him in a precarious position. When Amphine prepared to attack again, Gull tried to insult the demon, mocking him for being ugly and having only 3 hairs. Using the space between your fingers, Amphine, Gull threw a cheeky kick that knocked out one of the demon's teeth. The quick kick hurt more Amphine than he expected, enraged by insult and pain. Amphion he put all his strength into his arm and threw Gull like a fastball. The young orc flew through the air, heading straight for the nearest solid surface. Suddenly, a mysterious orcish hand caught Gull in the air. It was the old man in the heart, the elder of the village of Orcus Pubis. For shameless children like Gull, the elder demanded to be called the Dark Elder, seemingly oblivious to the chaos around him. He was more interested in scolding Chief Gak for causing yet another mess throughout the village before arriving here. The elder had also sensed Lozen's presence nearby. He saw the terrible state of the chief's right hand, bloody and beaten. Turning to the devil in the heart quickly caught his attention. Amphion, who was not given to deep reflections, was confused by the sudden turn of events. The elder asked if Amphion was responsible for the damage, even though he already knew the answer. In the heart, I also knew what steps I needed to take to correct this disrespect. Amphion he suddenly felt a sensation he had never experienced before. He couldn't believe that a mere orc could dominate him so deeply with just his aura. He didn't want to underestimate the old orc, activating his soul shaping just like Izol had done before. Amphion continued its mission of capturing the Dark Elf as its top priority. He planned to achieve this with his powerful leg and the scorching drill's soul, realizing that he was in a desperate situation, especially now that he could no longer feel the vice captain's presence. Amphion decided to rely on his brute strength and fearsome drill to advance at full speed. The elder in the heart he remained silent, watching the demons approach. When Amphion advanced towards him, in the heart activated a partial rage on his dragon arm. His green skin was soon covered in golden scales as his bestial spirit manifested in solid form, integrating with his body. The elder effortlessly blocked the relentless drill with a simple palm strike. While in the heart taught a lesson in respect for the devil, the initial ferocity of the drill began to subside. In the next moment, in the heart tightened his draconic grip, and the solid demonic drill began to crumble until it shattered into 1,000 small pieces, similar to broken glass. Amphion he was stunned to see his most powerful move disintegrate in the wind. The only advice the old man had for the brute was to wish him good night. The blow infused with the strength of the dragon of in the heart landed directly on the skull of Amphion, creating a massive crater of unfathomable depth and burying the demon within it. The impact of the blow reverberated throughout the city, causing tremors that shook nearby homes. And the heart accepted the final blow in the battle against the demonic intruder on this fateful night. He didn't care about the demon's purpose for coming here, but he had heard enough about their intentions towards the villagers. To the nearly invincible Amphion, his head was crushed into something unrecognizable as the old man watched silently. Chief Gak's loud and imposing voice broke the silence, criticizing the old man for destroying part of the village with a single blow. The attack infused with dragon strength left a conspicuous hole on the outskirts of their territory. In the heart he was silent for a moment before denying the accusations and insulting his boss for being an incompetent fool. The two argued as if they had a long history together. In the heart, so old that he went into battle with just one boot, shouldn't be there. He was supposed to live a peaceful life while the boss dealt with issues like intruders. However, tonight was an exception, as any one of these demons could easily destroy the village if left unchecked. In the heart, he blamed the boss for eating too much ramen and not enough meat. Meanwhile, back at the entrance to the village, where Izol had apparently been killed, a trail of blood led away from the walls. The path stretched towards the dark and dense forest. Izol was stealthily escaping, his destroyed body barely able to move. Izol would not have had time to escape if not for the explosion that killed Amphion. Now, the vice captain understands that these orcs are a formidable force. Despite this realization, Izol is not the type to forget an affront. He vowed to return with vengeance. Today, Gull had a very busy day. He was chased by his knife-wielding ant for stealing meat. He hit his head on a log. He ran through the forest and climbed an unstable mountain. He was disciplined by his boss. He fell off his prestigious cliff-turned toilet. He drank his own urine. He was chased by a flaming beast and rolled down another cliff. He managed to get an injured elf to safety. He burned his pants and was hit by a fireball. He crashed into a ramen stand. He faced a terrifyingly powerful demon and ultimately witnessed the most epic coup of his life. After enduring so much, Gull is now fast asleep, completely oblivious to the world around him. Gull's long and exhausting day finally came to an end.